Okay, for what you guys all waited a long time for, I'm going to start making the meatloaf. You can do this an hour ahead of time before you bake it. You can do it 15 minutes before you put it in the oven. You could do it in the morning, put it in the refrigerator, take it out an hour before you're going to bake it. The longer the mixture sits, the more flavor your meatloaf will do. It's 4 o'clock, so I'm not going to start baking the meatloaf until about 5:30. That puts me at a 6:30 eating time. I've got all of my meats, and my meats have been out for about an hour. And you're going to notice this is a lot of meat. And there's no particular order. This is the ground veal, and I will show you. It does say ground veal. You'll notice that I can, if you can do this with your food saver, that means that I don't know if you can hear that, but this no longer has the vacuum, so I need to go ahead and use that. So, in no particular order, we're just going to add our ground veal. Now we're adding our ground pork. And now we're going to add all of our ground beef. I'm using a combination of ground round and ground sirloin. You can use ground chuck, you can use ground sirloin, you can use the combination of multiple beefs. There is no right or wrong way to do a meatloaf. This is ground round. And this is ground sirloin. And I'm just using a lot of beef in this, just because I have to. It's thought out. The ratio for 2 to 4 people, use 1 pound of ground beef, half a pound of ground pork, and a half pound of ground veal. If you up the beef, so if you're a bigger family or if you want more than 1 pan of meatloaf, and you're going to use more ground beef, then you need to up the veal and the pork content. I unfortunately don't have any veal or pork extra that has been defrosted. They're sitting in my freezer right now. So I'm going to work with what I have. You're going to start, and I'm going to, actually, before I start, I'm going to put you guys down so you can not see what I'm doing, because all you'll see is the bowl. So give me a minute. Okay, there we go. All right, so what I'm doing is I am mixing just the beef and pork with my hands. Just to get it started to be incorporated. You don't want to not do this step, because what happens is when you put it in your pans, you're going to have your pork and your veal at the bottom and your ground beef on top, and that's not going to make a great meatloaf. Also, at this point, I kind of forgot that I have my rings on, so I'm going to just take those off, because this gets messy. I'm also going to wash my hands for a second here. And I'm doing that because I'm touching other things, and since my hands have been in meat, I just want to be a little bit on the cleanliness side. For this much meat, and that's a lot of meat, this is going to make a lot of meatloaf. This is the white onion that I cut earlier. I'm just going to dump that whole entire thing into my meatloaf. Always save your breadcrumbs to last, because you'll start to do this. And always shake your Worcestershire sauce. in no particular measurements. I put what I like. You can measure this out. There is no right or wrong way to do Worcestershire, but I usually give it a good couple of stirs. So that was for, I would say, maybe a quarter cup to a half cup. It just depends on how much Worcestershire you like. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use one hand. Keep one hand out of the bowl. And use your hands just kind of get your onions incorporated in your meat. Should you saute your onions? Well, you could, but you don't have to, because the onions will actually cook at the same time the meat is. So you're not going to have chewy onions in your meatloaf. They'll actually cook. Now I'm going to add a package of, like I said, I'm using the beefy onion Lipton soup mix. Now, if you're using Lipton onion soup mix and you're using Italian style breadcrumbs, you don't need seasonings because the salt is already in the soup mixture and you're getting more spices from the Italian. So you don't need to add salt or pepper to this. So I'm gonna put, and actually because I have so much ground beef, I am actually going to not use the other envelope. I'm going to actually, hopefully not drop you, which I just did. Actually, I'm going to pick you back up. I'm going to run and get a different soup mix. So be right back. I'm actually back. I got just a regular golden onion. I have the beefy onion. Now I'm just going to put an onion. Is this going to be a real oniony meatloaf? Well, yeah, it is. But it's still going to be a lot of flavor. You don't have to do this. This is optional. I do this because it gives our meatloaf a much better flavor. And I'm going to show you. I'm going to lift you up and I'm going to hopefully tilt you and not drop my phone this time. Okay, so if you notice where my finger is, that's the beefy onion soup mix. That's the golden onion. That's the one that we just got. So what I'm going to do, and again, this hand has not touched the meat. Only this hand has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix this in with the ground beef. Now, I'm going to add ketchup. The reason you add ketchup, or I add ketchup to the mixture, and I'm going to pull this back a little bit, is meatloaf can dry, ground beef can dry out, and I'm going to give it a really good dash of ketchup. And that probably, because I had so much ground beef, was probably a cup. You could use 2 squirts, 3 squirts. It all depends, but what this is going to do is keep your meatloaf moist. Okay. Now I'm going to add my eggs, and I'm going to add my eggs one at a time because I may not need all of the eggs that I'm using. Okay, that was 2 eggs. I'm going to add the third one. And you're just going to incorporate this. Okay, I took out 4 eggs, but this is getting, yeah, this does not need a 4th egg. 3 for the recipe that I used. If you're using 1 pound, half pound, just use 2 eggs. And sometimes you can get away with using just 1. So now I'm going to start adding my breadcrumbs. I had about this much left, so I'm probably going to use the whole container. You'll know what you want your meatloaf to do is to start coming together. And this, I can tell, is going to... It takes a couple of minutes to do this. If you don't have breadcrumbs, you can actually use fresh bread in this. You can use stale bread. If you have bread that's a little bit old that you want to get rid of and not throw out, you can use that. Just make sure, obviously, that your bread is not turning green. You don't want to put green. And you can kind of see that this is holding a shape and it's not really wet. It's moist enough, but it's not really wet. So this is actually done. Now, what other things can you put in here? You could put green pepper in it. You could put mushrooms in it. Hopefully, let me wash my, I'm gonna pick you up in a minute because I need to move my phone. So be right back.